Welcome to the CodeX Cantina. I am your host, Una.
And I'm Crypto.
And today we're going to do a Let's Read with the book Thrawn, Treason.
So today we are going to do our Let's Read, diving a little deeper into chapters 1 through 8.
And we're going to do, first part of this will be spoiler-free, but the idea is let's get a discussion going. Where the first part we're going to give you some feedback, some quotes that we really liked, and then once we get into the plot summary, that's when you're going to hit spoilers, and you might want to kind of click off if you haven't read it yet, and come back once you have.
Also spoilers for Rebels, the cartoon show as well.
Yeah, that's been out for long enough that we can't claim spoilers on that anymore. You guys need to go watch Rebels if you're a Star Wars nerd like we are. Crypto, overall thoughts?
So this is the third book in the trilogy, and I'm really enjoying it. I like this book. I do. And I know that over the next 20, 30 minutes or whatever, I'm going to seem very negative about this book. And I guess it's just because I had such high expectations of the book. But I am enjoying the book. I think that Zahn is a fantastic writer. I think that he puts a really good narrative together. It's good pacing. It's cohesive. It's fun. It's got a little bit of action, a little bit of this, a little bit of that, but I'm being very reserved, I guess.
Do you think any of that has anything to do with the fact that we've been pushing some like more classic, well-known, really, really well-written books that maybe when you compare it with back-to-back with Thrawn Treason that it might weigh you down a little bit?
So I think there's 2 points there that you make. So let me address both of them. The first thing is I think I can compartmentalize my thoughts between the different books we've been reading. And as you've said so often, we read some books that are brain candy. And then we read books that are intellectual, nonfiction, so on and so forth. I don't think that reading some of those other books have influenced me to a great degree. Your second point, I think, is that, yes, there is something that has kind of maybe tarnished this book, and that is why I brought up the TV show, is the Rebels TV show, I think, has tarnished this a little bit for me some, because the book is filler. I mean, let's face it. And it's good filler, and I'm enjoying it, but that's what it is. It's a filler. I mean, because as we said, Zahn can only do so much. He's only allowed to do so much because of Disney. And
Big Disney, yeah.
And we know what happens at the end of Rebels. And so we know that there are no dire consequences. But it's funny because you seem to be more positive, but ranking the book less than me. Why is that?
I think that's just going to be a term that I think we have. This book is brain candy. It's fun. So I am going to let a lot of things slide. Typically, like when we have like our book chat with the other Star Wars nerds, I don't bring up some of the negative things in that chat because I think a lot of them will, I mean, you've seen it, they will get, when they really like something, they don't want to admit that it has faults. And that's okay. I'm not that person. I really, really, really like Star Wars books. I love reading through these, but Zahn's got some things. I think he all of his writing is clear, but I think he's got some things that a lot of typical science fiction writers have that I think do drag him down. But I think that comes with the genre, if that makes sense. So I kind of accept those limitations and issues going into the book.
Now are we going to talk about smiling?
Oh, we're going to talk about smiling. We're going to talk about smiling. Oh my gosh. Okay, so there's not many quotes that I have here. I've got more that kind of break down in the narrative as we go through that. But I did have one that didn't really fit anywhere with like an analysis point, and that was, it's been said that Coruscant's cultural life is the suede glove covering the granite fist that is the true Imperial power.
That's chapter 6 or 7 when he's talking to Savit, I think his name is.
Okay, so I guess that's later on. But, how do you just remember that? I am terrible at remembering where stuff is. That's pretty impressive to me.
And he's talking to Krennic about how basically the music theater part is the only reason that he's a Grand Admiral.
Ooh, that quote, that got me. That was a good one, and I don't even think it's good for the purpose of this book and what this book is trying to accomplish, I love what it just means for all of Star Wars and what Coruscant means. Like one city enveloping an entire planet. Ooh, that was just I thought it was a really good quote.
Now, do you think, before we move on, let's talk about that 1 second longer and one other quote that I just remembered a second ago. I don't remember the exact quote, so you'll have to probably bring it up. But do you think that there's any correlation, as we've said before, that Star Wars is a big metaphor for spaghetti westerns, but also there's a lot of prejudice, racism, xenophobia stuff that you can see and read between the lines? Do you think Coruscant represents an actual real city? Do you think Zahn is thinking of a real city?
I think you can think of Star Wars as a space opera spaghetti western. But spaghetti westerns, in a sense, also had a lot of racism when it came to when they were dealing with the indigenous.
But is Coruscant Chicago? Is it London? Is it Tokyo? Is it New York? What do you think? You think it could be one of those cities like he's using?
Okay, so Coruscant, I think, if anything, would be more akin. I don't think they're pushing for this, but I think it's more akin to the United States of America as a country being, the melting pot. Where, if you go to the West Coast, you have a lot more Asian influence. East Coast, you're going to have a lot more of the European influence, just in terms of like proximity. That's what's going to happen when people cross borders and such. Obviously, you have the western border, you have the northern border, and each one's going to be distinctively different. But America was originally intent to be, the melting pot. That this is where culture can come to be safe and chase their dream, chase their hopes, chase the freedoms that America specifically could offer. I think Coruscant is that.
I like that.
But
yeah.
with a heavy glove of the fact that it is just ruled and ruthlessly governed. It's got bureaucracy coming out the wazoo, and this book goes heavily into that wazoo aspect of things.
So real quick before we move on, why didn't you put the quote in there of the sparkles?
Oh, we're getting to that.
Oh, okay.
We're getting to that. I will not allow an author to use sparkle vision and get away with it. Okay,
That's almost worth one whole point out of a 10 scale itself.
ooh, that brought it down for me. Ooh.
Yeah, it did.
All right,
that is terrible writing.
Let's jump into summary, and we're going to enter the spoiler section. So come back if you haven't read the chapters 1 through 8 at least.
Okay.
So basically, we start off with a Chiss ship with Arlani and our man Eli Vanto back again, kind of tracking a ship through space. Thrawn receives disturbing news that his funding for his TIE Defender program is going to be stripped away for the Stardust Director Krennic's project. So Thrawn goes to meet with him, and in this meeting, he accepts kind of like this challenge to get Stardust back on schedule by getting rid of these Growlocks that are slowing down his plans, right? And he's going to do it in a week, and apparently that's just unheard of. So he gets there, he starts investigating them directly, and that's when he kind of learns that these ships that are misfiring and just going into hyperdrive because the Growlocks are munching on the power cables are not misfiring. It's all part of an elaborate ruse to get these ships to go to meeting points, and then have these people are taking material, stealing from the Empire and moving them somewhere else. So he starts tracking it down, and he stumbles upon basically a Grisk warship, where once it enters battle, Arlani and Vanto are there as well because they were tracking that shuttle, and they kind of joint attack, crush the Grisk ship. They meet, and Thrawn's like, hey, there's totally a third ship because the sizes don't match up with the ships we've met so far. The ship you were tracking somewhere out there in camouflage still, right? So what they come up with this plan, basically, to send the Grisk prisoners that they have in a shuttle back, and with the idea that they're going to send a decrypted message back to Pharaoh, who's on the Imperial Star Destroyer, that could be decrypted easily by the Grisk ship, so that way the Grisk can destroy the prisoners, so that way no prisoners left alive. So they do that, and then they fire, and there's several TIE Defender commercials throughout this in terms of their maneuverability. Here we get the commercial on their shields. Yeah. And they take off. Thrawn's like, hey, we'll follow. They find a Chiss prisoner that was being held captain, Eunhee. And Eunhee is very young, 7 years old, I believe.
7.
Is that right?
Yeah.
And they find out that she has the gift of third sight, being able to navigate with the Force that we saw in the second book, which I'm assuming you've read at this point. And we suddenly get the bomb dropped on us, I think. This is the first time that I remember of second sight, where they can kind of mind probe into... I don't know if I think it's anyone. It's kind of like, Jedi Force powers in a sense. They can mind probe into someone and kind of read their thoughts. So they bring their own Chiss navigator on to second sight, this Chiss girl, and they find out where the Grisk are. They're a nomadic species, so they get the charts to get back to them. And Thrawn embarks upon grabbing Ar'alani and Vanto and... was it Vani? What's her name?
The one that Vanto has the hots for.
Vanya. No, hey, Papa Disney don't know what Eli has got cooking for Vanya behind the scenes. It was chapter 3 where Vanto, I didn't know if they were going to kind of go through the, it's very xenophobic in the Empire. I didn't know if Vanto was going to kind of have like the hots for Vanya. Like it was kind of, I don't know. I had that sense in chapter 3, but I think it was just to... After going through all the way through chapter 8, I hope that's not the way they're pushing it, because we haven't seen any other signs of it. It seems like more that they're hitting on Eli Vanto's isolation, that
he needs companionship.
He doesn't have a bro. Like,
yeah.
Thrawn was his bro. He wasn't... I wrote down improperly equal earlier. It's not. They're not equals, but it's... Vanto was the only one that, Thrawn was the only one that Vanto really connected with.
They had companionship.
So I thought, is Vanya going to fill that role? Like, are they going to explore that further? And I think they will, but we haven't seen it yet. So they've planted that seed. And another seed that they planted was the Karen scenario where Ronan's like, hey, Thrawn blocked your promotion too, by the way.
Oh, yeah. He's a master manipulator, Ronan is. And he's playing her like a fiddle. And we'll see that either to... explode when they come head to head, or it will bite Ronan in the butt later. Like, Thrawn will turn it around to how he is the one that caused the Commodore to get not promoted or whatever, or something like that. Like, it'll come out that Thrawn manipulates it some way.
Have you noted that Zahn has to have one super whiny character per novel? Like, you had Juhair in the first one. The second one was kind of Anakin and Padme, like that whole storyline. This one is Ronan, where you're just kind of like, I hope that guy dies. Like, I don't like him.
And I'm listening to the audiobook, and Mark Thompson, the guy that does the narrating, he uses the same voice always for that type of character. It's the same tinny, nasally, whiny, you can't be serious, Thrawn! Like, it just makes you want to punch him in the face even more. It really does.
Every time I got to some of those chapters, I wanted to skip them in Alliance. That was a storyline that was rough to get through. So let's talk about voicing. I thought... this is an interesting book because we kind of have... I think you'd classify this as third-person omniscient narrator. But they jump to kind of following a particular character a lot each chapter.
Yeah, they jump a lot.
And I really like the Thrawn chapters when we get to follow kind of his thought process of where he's like, she smiles. That represents either indignity or being, furious. And you see him start to ask questions that then unravel that previous scenario to understand which it is. And you can kind of understand Thrawn just isn't just brilliant right away. Like, he gets these hints and then works out the solution, which I think is just a really nice way to kind of unveil his intelligence in a sense.
Yeah, definitely. I agree. I think that it's fantastic writing. I like how he basically, it's Thrawn's superpower, but it's subtle. And in the audio version of the book, it's cool because they do it like this echoing thing, like he's talking to himself inside of his head.
And it's interesting because that could easily be done poorly. This is an overdog, right? We're so used to the underdog story. Thrawn is the overdog, where he is prepared and knows how to figure things out. that you're still rooting for him, but you know he's going to come through in a sense. It's kind of like Sherlock Holmes, where Sherlock is, he's going to figure it out, he's intelligent, but if you're constantly on him, like, and through his thinking, it's just going to be irritating as a reader. That's why Watson existed. Watson was a way of experiencing Thrawn's brilliance,
and
through these
that's Vanto here.
less intelligent characters. That's Vanto. Vanto is Watson in this book for the sole purpose of being like, oh my gosh, this guy's really intelligent, but I still appreciate those few chapters where you get the point of view thinking that Thrawn's going through.
Eli brings us back down to earth, because you're following around the superhero, Thrawn, and Eli gives you a little bit more of perspective. And the other characters as well. And as much as we hate Ronan, he is serving a purpose, and I think that he is a very well-written character for us to hate. Otherwise, we wouldn't hate him so much if he wasn't so well-written, and I think that adds a lot of, what's the word I'm looking for, depth to the story.
So I want to get straight into what I think is a very important passage about where this book may be going and the naming of this book. So when we get to that, the Chiss, the girl that is aboard the Grisk ship, we have a line from her where they're asking, like, hey, were there other Chiss aboard? And she says, no, Unhi said. They use others as their navigators, other peoples, some trained by the attendants. I was the only Chiss. I was... A wave of pain and fear swept across her face. A gift.
Now, we looked it up, and gift was not capitalized there, right?
No, it was not capitalized. So either she's a gift to the Grisk, or the gift would use her, or the Grisk would use her as a gift. What were your thoughts when you came across that line and where this might be going?
It kind of confuses me, because there's basically like 4 groups here, right? Maybe even 5 groups. There's the Grisk, there's the Chiss Ascendancy, there's the Empire, there's the pirates, and then there's the people that are stealing from the pirates. So like there's 5 different groups here, and like, are we talking about a 6th group, the others that are supposed to be the big baddies that the Emperor is building Stardust for, and that the Chiss Ascendancy sent Thrawn to see if they could work with the Empire against the big baddie who are the others, or are the others the Grisk? Like, I'm very confused, to be honest.
Well, you know what? I haven't read the original Heir to the Empire trilogy. What were they called? The Vorhes, the Var?
Oh, the Vogari. Yeah.
Yeah. So we read Outbound Flight recently, and my understanding is that the Grisk are basically the Vogari, just legends to canon now. And the Vogari and we've seen that he recycles ideas, like a lot. If you love the new Thrawn trilogy, while there's enough differences, my understanding from our group chats, there's still a lot of recycled ideas from what I've gathered through our conversations. But the Vogari use slaves, so I didn't think the others were like a particular race. I just viewed it as kind of like these were the slaves that maybe the Grisk were using. But more importantly, I don't know how they were navigating, but more importantly is the fact that she's a gift. We got to talk about the idea that potentially the Ascendancy gave the Grisk this young Chiss, basically. Because we understand from the previous book, Alliances, I think it was, there were some references that there was some like dissension amongst the Ascendancy, that maybe some of the Ascendancy is forming an alliance in a sense with the Grisk, and she was a gift in the same way that we saw in Game of Thrones, where you saw like the babies being given to the White Walkers, something along those lines.
That's a good theory.
Now here's another thought. Have you thought much about what will be the treason in Thrawn? Yes,
I have thought about that a lot, because I think the name of a book implies a lot. And I've been really trying to figure out, is it a reference to Thrawn himself, that he is going to be treasonous to the Empire? Obviously, that could be a route that Zahn takes. Is it that he is seen as a traitor and treasonous towards the Chiss Ascendancy? Very obvious route. Those are the 2 obvious ones. But I don't think it's about Thrawn, I think that is about Ronan.
I like that. I like it just because I hate Ronan. I want him to get it. You know what I mean? Like, I want him to get screwed.
And I think that's how he's going to get it. I think he's going to be seen as the
Okay.
traitor.
I look forward to finding out where they're going with this. My thoughts were more along the lines of, just due to Rebels, we know Thrawn's going to end up with the Empire.
Yep.
Right? He's not going back to the Chiss. I mean, like, technically he could, but just timeline-wise, there's not that many episodes. Like, 9 to 14 is when this book fills, right? Of season 4, I think it is.
Yeah, it's somewhere in there is when this takes place.
So you can't have, like, some crazy thing like he goes back to the Chiss with this, which is just a spoiler of the fact that Rebels exists, right? So I think what's going to happen is we'll see, my guess is that we're going to see something happening rotten within the Ascendancy, because we have that quote where Thrawn says, "My heart is with the Chiss, but my actions lie with the Empire," in terms of loyalty. I think something will happen to cause Thrawn to break his loyalty with the Chiss, potentially, because he sees some of the rottenness in terms of giving away these children to the Grisk or something like that. And maybe as a result of that treason, hopefully Ronan gets it to your point exactly. But I'm hoping that's explored, because you can't just drop the line of her saying she's a gift and not have it be relevant.
Yeah. It could be Aralani, too, because she's loyal to the Ascendancy, but she obviously cares deeply for Thrawn and realizes his significance and his importance. And, I mean, their relationship is obviously very strained, but I think there's a lot of people they could go with as the traitor part of this, quote, Thrawn treason. But I don't think it's about Thrawn, though. I think it'll be about one of the side characters are going to be seen as a traitor. It'll be Ronan, Eli, Aralani. I think it'll be somebody else. I don't think that it'll be Thrawn. Maybe Aralani and the Chiss Ascendancy see Thrawn as a traitor because he ultimately picks the Empire, and we know that because he's with the Empire in the end of season 5 in Rebels. So
I think it's time. It's time. We need to talk about Sparkle Vision.
All right, the bad writing. Oof. Oof.
I think all of Zahn's writing has been really clear. We talked a little bit about when we read Gunslinger, like when go read that book for this. But there's a scene with Jake, when Jake dies. It's not really that well written. You don't really know exactly what's happening. It's hard to picture the visual script of what's going on in your brain. You don't have that issue with Zahn.
Right.
But there are some issues here that we need to talk about, where particularly that quote where he says, "Some navigators, especially the younger ones, occasionally experience a sort of sensory overload," Aralani said. "It's accompanied by such symptoms as headaches, body aches, sparkle vision, and vertigo."
I'll be honest with you. When I heard that, I was listening to it in my truck, and I started laughing out loud to myself, and I actually grabbed my phone and rewound it so I could listen to it again to make sure I had not hallucinated that, because sometimes when I'm driving, I just zone out a little bit, and I make sure that I did not zone out on that, because I was like, no, it didn't just say that, because, I don't know.
How did the editor let that go?
Yeah.
Like, unbelievable, right?
Especially for Star Wars.
Let's also talk.
Oh, so bad.
So we made some predictions before this book about how many times he's going to use the word "smiled thinly" and the word "perhaps," which is just kind of like a fun. It's a Thrawn idiosyncrasy in a sense. Mm-hmm. So I did a count, not of Thrawn's idiosyncrasies, but just how many times "perhaps" was used, and it was used 87 times.
And what was our guesses? Were we like in the teens? Like we were like, oh, he'll use it like 15, 16 times or something, right?
Well, we didn't. I don't know if we guessed on "perhaps." I know.
Or maybe
I guessed. No, we did. I guessed 37, I think, on "perhaps," actually, if I remember correctly.
I was in the teens somewhere, like 17, 18.
Now, I remember when we talked about Smile Thinly, because he uses Smile Thinly a lot, I feel like. But I was like, how many times does he use Smile? Do you know how many times he used Smile in this book?
Was it like 80 something?
74 times. In this book's like, what, 330, 350 pages? Like,
it's a short book.
For him to be using Smile every 4 pages, roughly, I don't know the math off the top of my head, but that's way too many, in my opinion. And I notice it as a reader.
Yeah, and we can't be the only ones noticing that.
Yeah, and I shared some of this with you earlier, but just at the top of my reading list, I did a search of books that I've read recently or plan to read, of how many times they use Smile, just to get a number. And God Bless You, Mr. Rosewater by Kurt Vonnegut, uses Smile 14 times.
And how long's that book?
I think most of his books are like 300 pages.
All right, so it's equivalent.
Yeah. The Reavers uses Smile 5 times. Okay? William Faulkner. Not a happy writer.
Not a happy writer.
Sherlock Holmes, Hounds of Baskerville. Baskerville or Baskervilles? I don't know. 8 times.
And that's a pretty lengthy book,
So he's using Smile like 10 times as much as other authors. But that's not where this ended.
We took it one step further.
We took it one step further.
Tell us,
okay,
Una.
Is this a Star Wars thing?
Star Wars universe is the happiest place to be, like Disney.
I looked up Drew. Oh gosh, I can never say this guy's name. Drew Karpshin. I feel embarrassed not knowing his name, but I love his writing. Drew K. DK is what I'm going to call him from here on out. He is. That's a good writer. I like him. If you're into science fiction, he's a great writer. So he wrote Revan, The Old Republic. That uses it 70 times. And Darth Bane uses it 92 times. So my hypothesis is that Star Wars people are just more happy and like to express themselves via smiles as opposed to any other writer.
Hey man, lightsabers and force powers. What's not like to love?
I love it. You know what? But it does get to me because the problem is that when you use the same word like that over and over again, it's going to force you to use a lot of adverbs, like smiled thinly, smiled, protrusely, like
broadly,
like he'll
viciously.
Yeah, and he should be using words like grimaced, something to break it up, because adverbs will slow down a reader's comprehension, enjoyment, like you need adverbs, like don't get me wrong, but you don't need 74 adverbs for smile in a novel. Still enjoy the book, but like that's something that like it exists. It's an issue with the book when we talk about some problems with it.
All right, so when it comes down to it, where are we ranking this one? Well, we haven't done this one. We didn't do one of these for the first 2 books, so should we tell the readers kind of how we ranked the first 2, just in general, even though if we don't know our exact numbers?
Yeah. Okay, well, going back to it, I think I ranked the first Thrawn in the new. I know we're calling it trilogy. I don't know if we know for sure if it's a trilogy or not, but the new Thrawn canon, it was just called Thrawn. I think I gave that a 9.
Yeah, I think we both.
And I think
we both gave it a 9.
I think I gave. Okay, and I think I gave Thrawn Alliances an 8.
Yeah,
like the second one.
I think I gave it like an 8.5 because I like the stuff with Vader a little bit more than everybody else, but.
Well, when he was doing the suit, force move thing, like that was.
It was awesome. That writing was
pretty
so
awesome.
Good.
Yeah. Okay, so let's wrap it up there. I'm going to spin my flowing white cape, which, like Ronan, apparently gives him respect. couple of groan-worthy moments there, but overall, very, very good. What do you rate this book so far? Chapters 1 through 8, a lot to change, a lot to talk about.
So I'm going to give it barely an 8. And for many of the reasons you just said, this book feels like it's going nowhere. I'm very apprehensive now because I know what happens in Rebels. Spoiler alerts, if you haven't watched all of Rebels and you're reading Thrawn, what is wrong with you? Ezra and Thrawn go off on flying space whales, and
They're space whale surfing.
Yeah.
Is what they're doing.
Yeah, and so we know that there's no consequence for Thrawn. He is not thrown in prison by the Empire. He's not thrown in prison by the Chiss. We know that there's no real ramifications for Thrawn. And like you said, we have 100 pages, nearly like 4 hours on the audiobook of setup. Like this would be, if this was a 10 episode, if this book was turned into 10 episodes of a TV series on Netflix or Amazon, and you were saying 100 pages would be several hours. Like, could you imagine all of this happening over 3 or 4 episodes? You would be bored to tears. Like, nothing's really happened except for one space battle.
A lot depends on the writer, but yeah, 100 pages on average, from what I've seen, tends to be about 2 to 3 episodes. It can easily be 2 to 3 hours of content, and then just depending on how they break it up and such. I'm going to go with a solid 7, which isn't bad. Some people think like that's bad, but for me, that's like, hey, that's a good book.
That's a C,
I
man.
enjoy my time. I may or may not read it, just depending on the context. The advantage Star Wars has is I love these characters, and I like reading long journeys and episodes. So I could see myself reading it again, potentially just because of that. But if this weren't part of a bigger picture of things, I doubt I would. You know what I mean? Like, if this were a one-off book, I'd be like, ooh, should I drop this? Because they say a good rule for trying to decide if you should drop a book is 100 minus your age. So we're well past the point of no return, and I would had to have considered that. I've enjoyed it. It's been decent, so I probably would have kept going on, but like there would have been that pause. You know, like I would have considered it with, is he going to drop Sparkle Vision? He dropped Sparkle Vision on me one more time, and we're dropping this thing.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if this was the first book of the, quote, new trilogy, would we have been excited about it? Would we have, been excited for another book? Like, if this continues down this route, I will not be excited for a book 4. Unless maybe book 4 is set after the flying space whales, then maybe, because there's more gravitas, I feel like, to the story, and that's what it all comes down to is there's no consequences for Thrawn. We know he's going to win. We know he's going to come out ahead because he's the smartest guy, and that tarnishes a little bit because he is the overdog, as you've said. It'll be fun to see how it all turns out, though. And I think if some of the things pan out, I will be very excited for the end of this book, and maybe I jump up to a 9.5 again. I mean, Thrawn could surprise us.
It's like you said, we already know there's going to be no space whale surfing in this book, so we know it won't. Okay, let me put it this way. If there is space whale surfing in this book, I will overlook Sparkle Vision. I'll give it a 10. I'm putting my chips out right now. Space whale surfing 10. All right, so with that, peace out, guys. Next week we're going to record again for chapters 9 through 16 if you're doing the read along, where we're going to give you kind of like a breakdown from where we are at that point in time.
Yeah, subscribe, put your comments down below. Let us know what you think of the book, what you're ranking it, what you like, what you dislike. Are you smiling? Are you frowning? Are you thinly smiling? Let us know. Later, guys.
If this book made you smile.